Hello, and welcome to Science on 7th live stream, a virtual space where we talk about topics related to air quality and health. I'm your host, Pallavi Pant, and today is a very special day. As some of you would know, it is the World Environment Day, celebrated each year on June 5th. And this year, the theme is very topical, a global call for climate action. Even as we see the ways in which climate change is impacting people's health and livelihoods in the societies, we're also seeing a lot of ways in which we are tackling the problem and addressing the issues, trying to improve the livability in our cities, trying to improve the ecological systems and do a better job. And today I'm really excited to be welcoming Beatriz Cardenas, who leads air quality work at the World Resources Institute, or WRI. She has worked for several decades now across the science policy spectrum. If you can imagine a role that a person might play within the air quality space, she has played it all the way from doing the science and generating evidence to being the policymaker and making decisions about how those data and evidence can be used. She has a degree in environmental diplomacy. She also trained as an engineer. So she's really a fantastic person for us to be talking about today in the context of air quality action. If we take that climate and bring it down, and learn about the experiences from Mexico and Mexico City, but also the Latin American and Caribbean region as a whole. Welcome, Beatriz. Bienvenidos. We are very, very happy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. My pleasure to be here today.
Fantastic. So I'm assuming that you're joining us from Mexico City, which is great. So I'm going to start with a simple question. What is the quality of the air where you are right now?
Well, it's early in the morning, and it's a cloudy day. Yesterday and the last day has been we had a heavy raining, so today it's cold, 16 centigrade, so it's going to be hot at the midday. We have a very good air quality. Almost, I just checked in the Mexico City website. They have almost 34 monitoring stations, so you can um, roughly know how is the air quality. So it's good. It's very good. Usually in the morning it could be high because of the traffic. So today, because of the raining and because of the wind, it's very clear.
That
It's
is
a good quality.
It's good. Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. And I think we have a couple of images from Mexico City from like older years. And I'm sure that this is a question you've probably answered for people many, many times. But if we go back to the 90s, the prevailing thought was Mexico City is the most polluted city or among the most polluted cities in the world. And fast forward to now, we often talk about the successes that Mexico City has had in improving the air quality and trying to learn from those successes and implement those same solutions or principles in other places. So, can you tell us a little bit more, like take us back in time to what was the impetus for acting on air pollution and what kind of drivers led to the impressive work that the city has done in cleaning up its air, and you know where do you see the biggest success stories?
I would say, Pallavi, that back then there was some data being produced by researchers from the academy that they were measuring some high levels of pollutants, and they were raising the voice that we do have a problem. By the mid 80s, there was a monitoring network stage. I mean, a monitoring network stage. Air quality monitoring network was implemented, was established, and that's how we start looking at the data. And the data was really shocking. The data was really high, and I think that's why it was known that Mexico City has a very bad air quality because the data was there and the data was actually being shared. So the data was stroking, and the civil society also was raising the voice. So I think in that sense, it was all the stakeholders involved, the government. In that time, Mexico City was a federal district. So the federal government was actually running the Mexico City government. So in that sense, it was relatively faster. Any decision that the federal government will take, it will involve also the Mexico City authorities. I mean, the state of Mexico, the state of Mexico, which is the, the entity that is next to Mexico City. Um, and then the data start showing that we need to do something. There were some sources already identified. Back then, there was a refinery in the north of the city, inside the city. And there was a lot of, there was some industry, and the vehicles didn't have catalytic converters. Um, the gasoline still had some lead, so little by little, there was well, first it was a commitment, and a commission was created, and it was formed uh, by the federal government, by the local government, and then again stakeholders like the civil society and the research, the academy was involved. And then some actions were taken. I think that the most, one of the most important was to recognize that we had a problem. And for instance, that refinery was closed out. It was a presidential decree, and that changed a lot. The next years, you could see the levels of SO2 drastically being reduced, and then some progress was seen. Since then, ozone was a problem. Interestingly, it's still being a problem. We still have some peaks of ozone. But the fact that it was recognized, a program was established, and then with the information, with the knowledge that was available by that time, it was clearly that some actions should have been taken. The vehicles, some industries, and some restrictions for emitting high amounts of pollution. And interesting too that it was recognized that some resuspension from the what used to be the lake, the Texcoco Lake, was also impacting Mexico City in parts of in certain days of the year. So commitment, recognition that the problem was happening, and then the participation of different stakeholders. That's still the case right now.
Yeah, it's amazing, when you describe it, because I feel like often a lot of things that we talk about when we say we need to do these things, we need to address all sources of air pollution, we need to get all forms and levels of government involved, we need other stakeholders involved. It seems that, all of those things aligned. We need the right data that can tell us where the problem is. But I also know that often, when you're planning these types of large programs and you're trying to address problems, where you may have to take strict action in certain sectors or make hard decisions, there can sometimes be missteps, or there may be ideas that seem really good but didn't end up working out. And looking back at the decades of experience that Mexico City has now had with air quality management, are there recommendations that could be made to cities that are just starting that process, that are thinking about what data to collect and what sectors to act on and how to set up the governance structures? What should they do, or what should they be careful about in setting up those programs?
Well, I mean, having all data is always, I mean, the most data you have, of course, is the ideal thing. But we shouldn't wait to have all the data. Fortunately, I will say that if you would ask me 20 years ago, even 30, I would never imagine that all the data that we have now would be available to anyone. Satellite data, and even data with local sensors, all the different emissions inventories, the ways of identifying the contribution of some sources, and everything that we know. And I think the most important is everything that we know that air pollution is causing on our health and ecosystems, and now climate. You were mentioning today, I think, considering that today we are celebrating the um, Environment Day, and that the day that today the call is for action on climate. I think that we have that connection. Climate and air pollution are so close linked, and sometimes not recognized. So I would say that Um, use the data that you have and look for data that maybe will be there. And then there is so much that we know that some sources are emitting high levels of pollution that you don't have to wait of having the perfect data to act. I think some actions have been proven in other places. As you mentioned, some actions may not be received by the citizens well. So I think that the important thing is to explain to consider that whatever action the government or any sector is taking has to be explained and has to be shared and socialized. In Mexico City, we have had almost 3 decades of vehicular restrictions, originally only based on the number of your plate. Right now, it's based on the emission level that you have in your in the exhaust. That requires that people who has cars in Mexico City has to take emission testing twice a year and also pay some almost $30, right? So it's definitely an effort that everyone is doing, but you can see in the data. Unfortunately, I think that's something that I would recommend. Never forget that citizens need to be informed, and you have to look for any type of ways of communicating. Sometimes people who work in the technical and scientific world are not so good in communicating with the citizens, and I think it's important. People need to know that all this effort have resulted in reduction in air pollution and in benefits in their health and maybe some economic values that you don't notice. But if you are better in your health, then that means that you are not spending money in some way. So I think that there's a lot of knowledge. So use that knowledge. Do not wait to have the perfect data. And never forget that the citizen needs to be informed and included in all the decisions.
Mhm. Yeah, I think though that point is so critical that making sure that people see what the rationale for certain actions might be or what the value to them in undertaking those actions might be. So let's look ahead at the next decade. We're seeing in many places that because of increasing heat waves or wildfires, air quality levels are declining, even in places where we wouldn't expect them to. We are seeing higher ozone levels as a result of warmer conditions. So within Mexico City or then at the larger scale, how do you see this playing out? Are there new interventions that are being considered or new ideas that are being thought about to keep this progress on clean air moving along?
That's the discussion that now is, I mean, it's still happening. Of course, the issue of having higher temperature, as I was telling you that a week ago, it was very hot. And I think if you can see one of the image that we have is the Mexico City, how it's been involved. For instance, ocean. Ocean was a very, back in the 80s, we didn't have any standard for PM 2.5. It came in 2004. But since the last years of the 80s, it was clear that ocean was really high. We have a very high level, similar to the case that LA had. Um, but as I was mentioning before, it's important to know that everything that we have done has caused some progress. It's difficult to see, but if you see um, the upper row, and each of the little squares is one day of the year. And the color of that little square represents the highest concentration that was recorded that day. If it's
Right.
purple, it's really high. So you can see in the first row
Mhm.
is 1990, and the last row is 2026. You can see that the number of really, really bad, high
Right.
concentration hourly has been reduced. And it's
Mhm.
now concentrated. Before it was the whole year. And then it started being concentrated in the hot season, which is spring in Mexico City. And so that has been a problem, reducing the levels of ozone over the years. But you can see that there has been some progress. But people do not always know that. There have been some surveys, and people do not believe that the air quality is better. If you ask someone who is 20, a person who is 20 years old right now, they may be answering, no, the air quality is not better than when I was born. It is clear that it's better. It's not the air quality. We don't have yet the levels that we need, and that requires the progress. So looking in the next decade, I think that it is again a recognition that everything that was done before is not enough. We need to understand what are the physical chemical phenomena as well as issues as the temperature, as you mentioned, that we cannot control, but we can control the emissions. So that means that we have to make a stricter regulations and make a strict and harder. We have to make a bigger effort to reduce these emissions that we know that are causing ozone levels, and also understand that with higher temperature, not only the reaction that forms ozone gets faster, but we have more emissions. The trees are emitting more isoprene. Solid waste is getting decomposed faster, so we have faster emissions. Gasoline is evaporating faster. So everything is there, and I think that's why we need to make the connection. So I would say next decade we have to stop doing this siloing work on climate and air quality and even plastic, for instance. We have to connect the dots because I think that the citizens, people in general, are so overwhelmed with so many things. So if I am with air quality, I am not with climate. If I am uh, uh, pro reducing plastic, I am not with air quality. Everything is connected. So I would say the next decade is a lot of work, but we have a lot of data, we have knowledge, and we need to generate another knowledge to understand what is going on and what are the most efficient actions. I think something that we have not recognized in Mexico City that is there is what is the impact of this high level of ozone on vegetation. There has been some studies, there were some, but we have to recognize that whatever effort on reducing these pollutants, particularly ozone, would also get benefits on our trees and our agricultural production, biodiversity as well.
Yeah, that I think that part is also so critical because there are, I mean, A, we all need food.
Mhm.
B, there are so many communities that are heavily reliant on agriculture, both as a source of livelihood and of course food, that it is important that we start paying a lot more attention to that. So thank you for bringing it up. I think zooming out of Mexico City a little bit and looking across the, Latin America sort of region, we have seen so much progress in so many places. There are great examples of interventions that have worked. Also, really good examples of countries collaborating together and thinking about harmonized actions. Can you give us again, like some examples, especially for people in regions where they would like to see more coordination and more sort of collaboration? How have countries collaborated, and what are some of the ways that this has been useful in bringing cleaner air to people?
I would say that in the Americas, in the whole continent, there is a long history of collaboration. Um, me, even though Mexico, it's in the latitude is in the north. So there's a lot of collaboration, I would say, that we have to recognize between Canada, Mexico, and the US. And air quality has been an issue, not only because we share the border with the US. There are programs that have been specifically to collaborate on air quality. There is a North American Environmental Commission that has tackled on air quality, and then there has been a lot of collaboration on some regions in South America, I would say. Um, there is, a few years ago, when the Climate and Clean Air Coalition developed the Latin American assessment for short-lived pollutant. It was one of the first time, I think it was 12, 13 years ago. And it was a recognition. I mean, in order to make an assessment of the whole continent, you have to have data. And it was kind of surprising that some countries didn't have national criteria pollutant emissions inventories. So they have the climate, but not necessary greenhouse gases, but not necessary air pollution or criteria pollutants. If you look what has happened, and that was initiated not only because of the collaboration with governments, but I would say that the research community, scientists start doing some efforts and realizing we don't have a national criteria emissions inventory. Let's start doing that. And now some countries like Chile, Brazil, and Colombia have advanced in that. Back then in Mexico, we had a national emissions inventory. It has evolved. So that has been some collaboration. We have actually the UNEP has a group of collaboration in the region. I think that there's a big opportunity to reactivate it even more. You know, in many countries in the whole continent, in the Americas continent, we have one common thing that many people speak Spanish, right? From Mexico to the south, well, Brazil, of course, now. But they are very good in understanding the Spanish. And I think that's something that we have to appreciate more. We have this possibility of speaking the same language and sharing a lot of information. I think what is very interesting to highlight, and we have seen that, is that cities are also collaborating among each other. There are many efforts, E-Plate, T40, now great cities, bringing cities together to share, because cities have been the center of the action, and they will continue to be the center of the action. Sometimes they are well coordinated with the national government, sometimes they are not, but they are the starting point of the action. So I hope, and I think that many of us will continue trying to do this collaboration even more closely, and also trying to link with other regions in the world. I think that that's fascinating. We sometimes think that we are so unique because of this culture, because of this language, because of this history. But when we see what is happening in Nairobi, in Jakarta, in India, in cities, we are so much alike, and we have so much in common. I mean, the
I
sources are the
agree.
and I think that's the other collaboration that we
Mhm.
have to look forward and to stress it more, and try to do it. I do see a lot of hope in that sense, that
Mhm.
because of this collaboration, scientists are collaborating a lot, NGOs, non-governmental organizations are more closely together, in addition to the governments. And again, these are all these parts of the puzzles that need to be in place.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely so much to be learned and gained by also exchanging our experiences in different places. I think one other area where your reflections would be very unique in a way is your experience having done research and like published data and scientific papers, and then you also served as a policymaker and a decision maker. And are there reflections from that experience, or things that you would wish more scientists knew or would acknowledge about policymaking, or vice versa, that policymakers would
Mhm.
understand better about the how of science and the what of science?
Yeah, I think that as being in the science is so fascinating. I think that's something that I will never regret, and the more I can, I go back. But I think that doing these long-term studies sometimes require us to just to focus in our thesis, in our work, in our expertise, and sometimes we lost track of what's going on. Sometimes I think I would say that over the years you realize that robustness and science is so important. The technical aspect is key, but it's not enough. I think that we need to be aware what are the socio political situation. Um, So I would recommend that. Yes, I know that it's too much to do a thesis to get through the point that you want. But I think that we have to be open, and I think that's something that we have to learn as scientists. And particularly in my area, environmental engineering, I started being connecting with experts on health, and that was good, right? Because it's not. But over the time, you realize that you have to connect more with social scientists because many, and this is the policy making part that is coming later, and you learn by doing, but I think it will be great learning a little bit more how to connect. And it's difficult because the time is limited. You have to finish your studies if you are doing your research. That's the goal. But I think we be open to learn from other fields. I find that the interdisciplinarity is something that we should emphasize more. It doesn't matter what type of work you are doing. And then on the policy making, I think that is a big opportunity to share with them, to those who are not trained on this science, uh, particularly in air pollution. We always said, "Oh, this is complex." Yeah, but everything is complex. So we also have to find ways of communicate to them and maybe train them in like the ABC on air pollution, ABC on climate. I think the climate in climate people are more aware of some
Yeah.
key
Yeah.
phenomena, but in
Mm-hmm.
air pollution, I think that we have some work to do,
Yeah.
communicating what are the impacts, but also trying to get through that it's a complex but not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's be open
Yeah. Yeah.
and eager to learn from others.
I think that the point you're making, especially about, not trying to reduce things to, well, this is complex, but actually trying to explain, because at least my experience, and I'm sure you would have had similar experiences too, is sometimes even with people that have absolutely no background in air pollution, some of the things that we deal with are so common sense. I mean, of course, there's a lot of complicated science involved, but if you pare down to the basics,
Yeah.
a lot of it is common sense things. So we need to get over that, idea of like, well, this is so complicated, I don't even know where to begin. Actually, we can begin at a good place and, bring people with us. So I would also encourage everyone listening in to pay more attention to not just falling in the trap of this is complex. I know we're coming close to our time here, but I do want to ask you also like a more personal question. Your career trajectory has been fascinating. I think I've always just loved watching how your work has evolved, and also how you've threaded that needle really well. But for people who are listening in, and especially women, young women who are thinking about a career in this space, what would be your advice, or what would be your words of wisdom to them?
I think that the women we still have some hard work. I mean, some effort, extra effort to do. But I have found, and because I have some great mentors, not only women but also men, but particularly women, I think that we have to be more conscious. That um, we have to have more solidarity among us. We have to be open. We have to find our own mentoring network and be and having a network of women working on passing through the same parts that we are. I think it's difficult, but you can find many examples. So I would say that try to find your network, try to get or do mentoring. I think that's important. And I think this is fascinating, the intergenerational collaboration and connection that we are now having, particularly in the workspace. We do have that in families, but that is happening in the work place that is so great. I mean, you go to this conference and then you start talking with young women and then women that have more experience. I think that we have to do that on purpose. We have to do more connection and networking and help each other, definitely, and listen to each other.
Yeah, no, that is so true. The intergenerational piece, and also, just trying to reach out because there aren't that many of us. Even now
Exactly,
there aren't that many of us.
exactly.
So we really need to stick together. Okay. ¿Puedo hacer una pregunta más en español?
Sí, por favor.
Um, ¿Qué hace que tengas esperanza en que todas las personas respiren aire limpio? Last question for today.
Que tengo esperanza porque habemos muchas personas trabajando en estos temas con pasión, con dedicación y con conocimiento. Y entonces yo creo que esos tres temas se alinean para seguir trabajando a que todas las personas puedan acceder a aire limpio. En eso confío, eso espero.
Sí. Bien, muchas gracias para todos, Beatriz. What I'm taking away from this conversation is that there's lots we have learned over the last few decades. There is a lot that we still need to do, but we have good pathways as long as we break down some of the silos and we look for lessons and learnings where they exist. So thank you so very much for your time. We really appreciate all the work you do and hopefully continue to do towards the goal of clean air for all. And thank you again for taking time to join us today. Hasta pronto.
Gracias, muchas gracias, Paladín. Hasta pronto.
Everyone listening in, thank you for joining us as well. We hope you're celebrating World Environment Day in some way, and we will be back in July to talk about financing in clean air. So plan to join us then. Until then, stay safe. If you're in a place which is warm right now, stay cool, and we'll see you. Thank you.